Hi everyone, welcome to podcast number 3. Today I will talk about what I'm borrowing from Twyla Tharp, what she calls actually the creative habit. So I'll talk a bit more about this. Before I do, you'll see in the description below there is a link to Spotify. I've put those podcasts on Spotify now. I want to develop a bit more my podcasts this year, and I thought having them on a proper platform would help a bit. So please make sure you follow that page. The podcast will still be here on Instagram, but if you want to have a proper platform, please do go there, find them here, and if possible, follow them. Since I'm on this as well, I'll just talk about what I'm thinking of doing with those podcasts, really. There's really many things I want to talk about, and I'm trying to put this in categories. So you'll see that when I put them on Spotify, I think you do seasons or episodes, something like this. So I'm sort of following a particular thread, and I'm doing some on my own works, where I expand a bit on what I've done and what's behind the project, or the collaboration, or how we approached composing a particular piece. So that's sort of section 1. There'll be another section on topics about music and art in general, and in fact the podcast is called On Art for that purpose, because I really want to expand the discussion to more than just music itself. So on that part I'll discuss a bit more things relating to music and art in general, including the topic of today. And then I'm really looking at expanding this furthermore to maybe having chats with other musicians, informal interviews, really lots of things. So please make sure you click that link below and follow this podcast. It's called On Art, and yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting. I'll try to increase the frequency as well. At the moment I'm really releasing a podcast a month, but I'll try to make it maybe 2 a month. So lots of things happening on that side, and I might even, if I take it seriously enough, I might even improve my recording gear, whereas right now I'm only using my iPhone, whatever number this is. I might even go for a proper camera and a proper mic if it's worth the investment. So yeah, plenty of things to come with that podcast. On today's topic, I wanted to talk about so what I'm calling the term I'm borrowing from Twyla Tharp, which is the creative habit. So first, a bit more about Twyla Tharp, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name properly. It's not an easy name. She's an American choreographer. She's had an amazing career, and she's written a book called The Creative Habit. And in that book, she explains and she breaks the myths around creativity. And I read that book, and my mind was just completely changed my vision of music and creativity. And it sort of arrived at a moment in my life where I needed a better, or at least a different structure for my creativity. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that book. There's also another book which I've forgotten the author, but I will share that in the description. It's a book that talks about the daily habits of artists, I think, not just composers, artists in general. And I happen to have that book read around the same time as The Creative Habit, and those two together really gave me a sort of template on how I should approach my sort of daily routine as a composer, and how I should control my creativity. What's really interesting, and perhaps the most important message she shares in that book, is that creativity is not something that sort of falls from the sky and you're just lucky to grab it and catch it. She explains that creativity is a practice, and if you do a bit of it every day, you're never going to run out of it. Since I've read that book, I've pretty much been composing, or I've been creating, because not just writing music, but writing articles, working on my visual works as well, all those sort of things. I've done it almost daily, with very little exceptions, and I've never run out of creativity. And it's insane, because she's really right. Creativity is really something that you practice, and I like to think of the idea of having sort of water, that's constantly boiling, like you're preparing a stew, and it's just constantly going and developing. And since I've approached it like this, it's been amazing for me, because it's allowed me to be very, very creative, almost over creative. In some moments I feel that I have too many ideas and I'm not quite sure how to approach them and how to get them to exist. But yeah, it's been really good because it's completely steered that thing, and I've never felt that I was in an issue of the blank page. And this sort of changed my mind as well on that note, on the blank page, because I think it really doesn't exist for as long as you sort of keep creating on a daily basis. You'll never find yourself in a situation like this. Having said that, I think there's three factors that go in order for you to maintain this. I think the first one is constantly immersing yourself in things, to sort of always nurturing your creativity. So books, as you can see behind, when it comes to being a musician, music, of course, but the mistake that we often do is focusing only on finding inspiration and influences in music. I think in my case, art is a lot more important than music when it comes to influences, and this ties with how I grew up and having one of my parents who's an artist, and having parents in general that have always been interested in art, always brought me to museums. And I think although I see myself as a musician, I think my approach is much closer to the one of a painter perhaps than a composer. So very important to immerse yourself in art in general, in books, in literature, in dance, in sculpture, in movies, in really anything that comes close to art, philosophy as well. So if you have sort of a daily moment where you will discover something new, that constantly sort of steers ideas without even you realizing it. Another thing that I've learned from that book and that I've sort of applied to my life is creating regardless of your day or your challenges or what's going to happen in your life. In that sense, what I'm saying is that there are some days where I will write half a piece or a bar or 3 notes, and it really doesn't matter as long as you keep that ball rolling. And there's, at the moment, I think I'm working on 6 different projects, and in some cases I will write a bar of music a day, but in the end of a week that's 7 bars, and you multiply this by a couple of months and you've got a piece. So I think this idea of constantly creating without judging, regardless of if you think the quality is here or not, creating and then reviewing and adjusting and removing something that might have not been appropriate, but at least constantly having that sort of output from yourself. And I think the last one, and this one was really, really important for me, is, I'm not quite sure if it comes from her book, but it's the idea of taming the muse, taming the inspiration, taming the creativity. And what I mean by that is, I've had moments in my life where I was able to devote myself purely to music, and I would spend days and days and days on a piece. And when I changed my lifestyle, when I started having a day job, that's something I couldn't do anymore. And today, with a family, a day job, and this career, obviously that's not something I'm going to be able to do. So what I do is that I create something, and when I feel that I've really reached a point of excitement in creativity, that ideas are flowing, I stop. I stop and I come back to it the next day. And what happens is that when you come back to it the next day, the ideas are already here. Everything is still warm. So all you have to do is just to steer it back and it comes back up. And by doing this, you're never sort of in loss of inspiration, because you're always coming back to something that already exists. So those 3 things have really, really made a difference for me. There's many more points that she shares in her book. But I think those 3 things are very interesting, and they're very interesting. That ties to the second book I'm going to talk about. They're very interesting and useful processes to have when you are sustaining a living through another activity. And I think the challenge that a lot of artists have is that they are making a living outside of art, and it's very hard for them to find the time to devote themselves to art. It's entirely the case for me. I have very long days. They start at 4:30 and they finish at 10. So there's a lot of things happening in one day, and music, art, anything that relates to this career is done in the early hours and in the late hours. And having that structure in place really helps me, because I can start my day at 4:30, leave the house at 8 to go to my second life, and I've been more productive than some people will be in a day, and this is in the lapse of 3 hours only. And having this structure in place at least 5 days a week really helps to bring that creativity on the line of consistency. That second book that I found very interesting, and once again that works really for me, and there's probably lots of discussions on whether that works for other people or not, but it's that book called The Daily Habits, I think. I'll try to find the title. It's somewhere here behind. I'll try to find it and share it with you guys. And essentially what he's looking at is composers, artists, writers, and their daily habits. So he or she has done research on their lifestyle, on their biographies, and he's sort of done a timeline to show when composers and artists were creating. And what I found very interesting is, in the case of some artists, to see how proficient they had been, how much music had come out of them, and how little time they devoted to it on a daily basis. And when you see what else was happening in their days, you see how these other things were actually influencing the creative moments of their lives. He's not in that book, but I've read something recently about Olivier Messiaen, French composer. Amazing works, really one of the most innovative composers that's ever existed. Hugely talented. I mean, he's one of those people high above the other ones, really talented. And he's also very famous because he's done bird songs. And the way he's done them is that he would go outside in nature and he would transcribe the chants of birds. And then he would write music from those transcriptions. And a lot of his time was therefore spent in nature. And his influence was nature, specifically birds. And it's that time outside that led him to writing that music. And I think if you'd look at the balance between the time that he would spend at writing that music and the time that he would spend at immersing himself in other things than music, I think there's probably, an imbalance between them. And that imbalance is actually the reason why he's been so successful at it. Going back to that book, there's moments about Beethoven, Mozart, and all sort of times and ages. But what you can really see is that they were not spending 8 to 8 at 12 hours of fully being into composing music every day. And I think the reason why they would have not done this anyway is because in order to produce something, you really need to receive something in the first place. You need to sort of fuel that creativity and you need to fuel that production. And I think what we often do the mistake of is thinking that by being in the right environment to create, we're going to create, but we're not really thinking of where are we going to find our resources from in the first place. So I think the bottom line and what I'm trying to say in the entire chat is, first of all, creativity is can, and in my opinion is, a habit. It's a practice that you have, and any performer will go to his instrument and practice it every day. I think a composer should. In fact, a few years ago, in order for me to train and to create that habit, I would do a structure each month where I would say, you're going to write things following those rules. So first day of the month, you will transcribe the sound of a motorcycle. Second day of the month, you will write the color pink. Third day of the month, you will write in the style of Haydn. Fourth day of the month, etc., etc. And this sort of fueled my creativity, because every day I would write 4, 5, 6 bars of music following a brief. I would do this in the wee hours of the morning. It would take me no more than 10 minutes. It was an exercise just to sort of get my brain to sort of understand that I can just get stuff out of it whenever I want. So that's a really good exercise to do, and it really shows that you can find creativity whenever you need it. You can just trigger creativity whenever you need it if you practice it. Some of those exercises, by the way, that I've done over, I think it was a period of 2 years, I'm using them today as basis for the works that I'm finishing, that I'm completing. So it's quite interesting to see how you can go, into places where you're just doing an exercise and you're not really thinking, but that represents the seed for a project that's going to expand a couple of years later. So that first thing really helped me to have that habit. The second thing is understanding that there's moments in the day where I can devote myself to composing and to doing that production side of my career. And if I maintain that structure, if I tell myself I'm going to compose music every day between 5 o'clock and 8 and between 9 and 10 in the evening, then I'm sort of looking forward to it, because every day I'm finishing, there's a deadline, like at 10 o'clock I've got to go to sleep. So I'm not going to be writing music until 3 in the morning. I'm going to stop it where it is and I'm going to return to it the next day. And that sort of helps to constantly have that ball rolling and constantly have that creativity coming out. Those 2 books are really, really, really interesting. If you're into creativity of any kind, they're so interesting. And for me, that first book, The Creative Habit, really changed the way I perceived what I did. And funny enough, today I feel I'm more productive, whereas I have less time than I used to a few years ago. So that really proves that it sort of works. The final note, and I'll open up on this to any comments and discussions you guys want to have. In all this, you need to filter quality, obviously, because it's good to create, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be satisfied with what you're getting out. So you need to judge your own works and decide, was it such a good thing or not? But it's good to have constantly those sort of things coming out. That's really it for this subject. Once again, I've got this podcast on Spotify. It's called On Art. There's 2 episodes already. A first one that's on my piece 624. The second one, which is on the role of technology and particularly computers in how I perceive music, and this one on the creative habits. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll find ideas in what I've said. And in the link you'll find the 2 books I'm referencing, so hopefully you'll want to read them as well. Thank you for your support, thank you for watching, and see you next time.